Hi everyone, welcome to day 42 of Watching Me Learn Spanish. If you've been following along, you know that I am fighting a virus. I do feel a lot better now, but when I started the week, I was in the middle of this virus, like really sick, and I didn't have the energy to create the 5-minute videos that um, were the cornerstone of my learning method. So um, I decided that all I would focus on for the rest of the week was finishing language transfer Spanish. And I have 3 tracks left of language transfer Spanish, so I want to finish them up today. And then tomorrow I'll describe phase 2 of this learning journey because finishing language transfer is kind of a milestone for phase 1. Um, Nailing down the basics of the language and developing the ability to say things, even if I'm not saying things correctly and even if my vocabulary is very limited. And I was using um, the the stuff that I learned in language transfer to create the 5-minute videos that I would then practice throughout the rest of the week. So I was getting a nice mix of grammar and vocabulary through language transfer, and then forcing myself to speak output in the 5-minute videos. Tomorrow I'll describe what's coming up next, but today let's just sit down and get through these last 3 tracks.
What was to put?
Poner.
Poner.
Poner. I was putting the line in the past.
Ponía.
Ponía.
Ponía. Good. Now, if you want to say I put the point in the past, I put in the past. Of course, in English it doesn't change. I put present, I put past. I put for the past. Our base is pus. Pus. P-U-S. So how would you say I put?
Puse.
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 The endings don't take the accent here for these irregular verbs. Puse.
Puse.
You put informally.
Pusiste.
Pusiste.
Where did you put it?
¿Dónde lo pusiste?
¿Dónde lo pusiste? Good.
¿Dónde lo pusiste?
And now we can see where that poner pose was coming from. We said that when we have poner as part of a verb in Spanish, it's pose in English. Componer, compose. Exponer, expose. Opponer, oppose. And now we hear this pose sound coming out in the dot in the past. Puse, pusiste. What was to do or to make?
Hacer.
Hacer.
The base here, in this point in the past, is is. H-I-C. So if you want to say I made or I did,
Hice.
Hice.
and he made or he did,
Hiciste.
Hizo.
hizo.
Oh,
Here it would be H-I-Z-O. We can't keep the C because it would spell ico.
Ito.
Hizo.
Hito.
They made or you guys made.
Hito.
Hicieron.
Good.
Hiciste.
Whenever you identify one of these irregular verbs in the point in the past where the base of the verb has changed, then you know what to do with it. That e and o is coming from ar, and then you have imos isteieron from ir. Sometimes the change is subtle. We saw that pod of poder became pud. We saw in another lesson that ab of aber became up. Ven of venir becomes vin. So how would you say I came?
Vine.
Vine.
And he came?
Vino.
Vino.
You know how to say wine in Spanish?
Vino.
Vino.
He came with wine?
Vino con vino.
Vino con vino.
Vino con
Traer, to bring, has traje, I brought in the past. So how would you say he brought?
Trajo.
Trajo.
Good. We brought?
Trajamos.
Trajimos.
Trajimos. And I brought again?
Traje.
And traje also means suit, like the kind you wear. And it's masculine. So I brought a suit would be?
Traje un
Traje un traje.
Traje un traje. Vino con vino, traje un traje. There's one extra irregular past point to look at. It's extra irregular because it doesn't really follow these rules about what groups it's taking the sounds from, and it's also extra irregular because it is the past for both ser and ir. It is the past for both I was and I went. And this is fui. F-U-I. Fui.
I saw this
Fui.
in the videos.
Fui. So fui means I was from ser, point in the past, and it also means I went. So ser and ir, in the point in the past, they share a past. Fui means I was or I went. And fue means he was, she was, it was, you were, or went. So we see that it's extremely irregular. Fui, I was or I went. How would you say I didn't go?
No fue.
No fui.
No fui.
Fui. No
Fue, he was or he went. How would you say he didn't go?
No fue.
No fue.
No fue. How would you say we went?
Fuimos.
Good. And you informal?
Fuiste.
Fuiste. Now, to make they or you plural was or went, we would add on ieron, but we will find it very difficult to pronounce fuieron, fuieron. So the e sound, the I, fell away. So how would that sound?
Fueron.
Fueron.
Fueron. So the I, the e sound, falls away. Fueron. The same thing happens in a couple of other cases too. We have trajeron, from traer, to bring. They brought, you guys brought. Trajeron. Dijeron, they or you guys said. So a couple of other examples there of that I falling away just for sound reasons. Trajeron, dijeron is kind of difficult to say. So it fell away for efficiency. Dijeron, trajeron, fueron. So now that we have fueron, we can make the past mood tense. We can say something like if I were you, because we always go from the they form of the point in the past. So if they went or they were is fueron, we can say if I were you. And of course, we're using the mood tense here because we have if going into the past hypothetically. So this is a mood tense that's quite specific for the past. We're not putting the mood tense after si, after if in the present, but for this hypothetical past, if I were you, there we have it. In English as well as in Spanish. We said that if I were you instead of if I was you is mood tense in English.
Tú.
So how would that be? If I were you.
Si fuere tú.
Fueron becomes fueron.
Good.
And the I version is fuera.
Good.
Si fuera ti,
Now it's just the word for you.
tú.
Si
Tú or
fuera
usted,
tú.
depending on who we're talking to.
Si
So,
fuera
si
tú.
yo fuera tú,
Si yo
si fuera tú, o si yo fuera tú, si yo fuera usted, if I were you. Now we're understanding why we went from the they version to find the mood tense in the past. Because going from the they version instead of the to form means that if there is some irregularity, we will transfer that irregularity over into the mood tense. So we went from fueron to fuera, and we would go from, for example, dijeron, they spoke, to dijera. So we carry over that irregularity of having lost that I. Trajeron, they brought, and then trajera for the mood tense. I had was tuve. What was they had or you guys had?
Tuvieron.
Tuvieron. So now we can say, if I had it, I would tell you. If I had it, I would tell you.
Si tuviera.
Si lo tuviera,
I would tell you. You can use contar. Decir is very irregular for would. So if you don't want to deal with that now, imagine you're in a real life context, you can just go to the more regular verb, which is contar. I would tell you, informally.
Ti conté.
te contaría.
Good. Si
Te
lo
contaría.
tuviera, te contaría, o te lo contaría. I would tell you it. We like to close with this it in Spanish a lot. Si lo tuviera, te lo contaría. I would tell you it. So we have to do or to make, which is hacer. And we said that the root for the point in the past is is, H-I-C, for the I version. So how would you say I made or I did?
Hice.
Hice. And they did or they made?
Hicieron.
Hicieron. Good. So you could say, I wanted for them to do it. I wanted that they did it.
Quería que lo hicieran.
Good. I wanted them to do it. I wanted that they do it. Quería que lo hicieran. How would you say I wanted for us to do it? I wanted that we do it. That we did it.
Quería que lo hiciéramos.
Good. Well done. Quería que lo hiciéramos. Good. I'm not as interested here in installing, let's say, all of this content, all of these irregular verbs. What I want to give you is an exposure to how they might work, the irregular verbs that you can come across, so that practicing, you can manage them. So you should not be afraid of making mistakes. You should build the verbs how you're used to. And if you suspect that this one might be irregular, check with the person that you're speaking to. So in the spirit of looking at irregularities in Spanish and how to deal with them and how to identify them, I wanted to spend a little bit of time speaking about making your own rules. We've taught you a great amount of Spanish for you to be very conversational and reach fluency just through practice and listening in a very short amount of time if you get practicing. But we haven't looked at every single piece of content of Spanish, of course. But the content that we've looked at has taken from every area of the language in an analytical way, which will allow you to make your own rules when you come across things that you don't quite understand whilst you're practicing and exposing yourself to Spanish. So I just want to experiment a little bit in regards to that with you now. So I will present you with some imaginary situations where you see the language behaving in certain ways, and I want you to make your own rule. Now, it doesn't mean it's necessarily your own, somebody else might have come up with it before, but that you will figure out for yourself what is going on. So, for example, the word for too, as in T-O-O, is demasiado. Demasiado.
Demasiado.
It's a bit of a long word, but if you break it up, it's easier to digest. You have de más, of more, iado. And this is too, T-O-O, as in too many. Actually, de más can be used by itself. If you say, tengo cuatro de más, I have 4 of more, tengo cuatro de más, it means I have 4 too many, I have 4 spare, I have 4 extra. So, demasiado means too. Now, imagine you hear these following sentences, and I want you to work out what's happening here. Why this word is behaving differently in different circumstances. So, you might hear demasiadas casas. You might hear demasiados coches. And you might hear demasiado agresivo, demasiado agresiva, and demasiado agresivos. Again, you might hear demasiadas casas, demasiados coches. Here, it's changing from the base form demasiado. No? Demasiadas casas, demasiados coches. And then here, it's not. Demasiado agresivo, demasiado agresiva, demasiado agresivos. So why in one situation is it changing, and why in the other situation is it not?
Changing for nouns.
The only difference I see is that it's related to nouns in the first 2 examples, and in the second 2 it's related to something descriptive. Adjectives.
Espectacular. Well done. Brilliant. That's it. We said that identifying what type of word we have will mostly be all we need to do to figure out what's going on. So we understand from this that when demasiado goes with a noun, it will change to match it. Demasiadas casas, demasiados coches. But when it goes with an adjective, it won't. Demasiado agresivo, demasiado agresiva, demasiado agresivos, demasiado agresivas is not changing. So we didn't learn that here, but we've been analytical enough of the language for you to figure that out by yourself. So another example for you to figure out what's going on. Now the words alla, wing, agua, water, and aula, hall or classroom, are all feminine words. But we say el ala, the wing, el agua, the water, and el aula, the classroom. What's going on?
Is it because the first letter of those words is A, and it would be weird to say la, ala?
You have other words that begin with A, where you have la at the beginning. For example, la alfombra, the carpet, la almohada, the pillow. So you need to find something that's different between la almohada and la alfombra to el agua, el ala, el aula.
Well, the difference in this case is that it's just two syllables, perhaps.
That's it. They are two syllables and they begin and end in A. So it's a very specific thing. It's not something that we're really going to spend time on learning here in this course, because it's very likely as well that you forget it. So what we have done throughout this course is given you the analytical skills to work it out by yourself and the confidence to make your own rules. So that's the rule. They're all feminine words, but they take L because they are two syllables and they begin and end with A. And we know that they are feminine because we say el agua fría, the cold water, fría, not frío. So we know they're actually feminine even though they're taking L. One more exercise like this. The word for one is uno. The word for some is alguno. And the word for none is ninguno. So we have uno, alguno, ninguno. One, some, none. So if I tell you how many do you want, you will reply to me uno. Or if you don't want any, ninguno. But if I say one man, how do I say one man or a man?
Uno.
Un hombre.
Un hombre. And if I say some man, I say algún hombre. And if I say no man, I say ningún hombre. So we have uno, alguno, and ninguno. No quiero ninguno, quiero uno, quiero alguno. But if I say I want one car, for example, quiero un coche, quiero algún coche, no quiero ningún coche. So what's happening there? Why does uno become un, and why does alguno become algún?
Because a noun is following?
Yes, because we have a noun following it, and it loses that last o. So uno, alguno, ninguno become un, algún, ningún. And you would notice that it doesn't happen with the feminine. So we have una mujer, a woman, alguna mujer, some woman, ninguna mujer, no woman. So the point is just this, that we need to analyze the language that we are coming across, trying to pick out anything that we don't understand, to tackle it so that we control it and we understand what's happening, so that that element of the language doesn't control us. Very quickly, thinking in this way, you will get over your technical problems in the language. You will solve your technical problems. And then when you solve your technical problems in a specific language, then you can start to live freely in that language and become somebody else in that language that is also you, but somebody else, because you are using this mechanism or this tool which, as we've said a few times, permits and obliges you to perceive and express the world in a certain way. But before we can fully take advantage of that, we want to get over our technical difficulties. And this is achieved not through memorizing what is correct, but analyzing and understanding what is correct and finding why.
Last track.
There are also some variations that you might come across in dialect. For example, in most of Spain, they use le and les whenever they're referring to him or her or you formal or you guys or they. So instead of lo and la and los and las, they're using le and les, not just to make to him, to her. They will use it always when they're referring to people and not things. So in most of Spain, le veo means I see him, her, or you formal, and lo veo means I see it. But in the great majority of the Spanish-speaking world, this isn't the case. In most of Spain, you have vosotros, which is the you plural informal, which is only used in Spain or most of Spain, but again, nowhere in Latin America. So that might be something you want to listen out for if you will practice this dialect of Spanish. Many accents have an aspirated S in Spanish, so you might hear está instead of está, como está instead of como está, espero instead of espero, and that O isn't splitting. Podés instead of quieres, querés. So you might come across small differences in different dialects of Spanish, but they are minor, and you now have all of the know-how and experience to identify and understand them. And if you want, adopt them. You can adopt these differences. It's advisable to speak like the people you are practicing with, because the more you speak like the Spanish that you are hearing, the more you understand. Now, if you're talking with people from different Spanish-speaking countries, people with different dialects or accents in Spanish, then you might get something like a pan-Hispanic accent, let's say, like many native Spanish speakers who move around the Spanish-speaking world or spend time with Spanish speakers from different countries also have. You might even find yourself switching between different accents when you're talking with people from different places. Again, a phenomenon that we also find occurring amongst native speakers. Ahora hablamos español. Ahora somos hispanohablantes. Now we speak Spanish. Now we are Spanish speakers. Somos hispanohablantes. Y solo tenemos que practicar, hablar y analizar para perfeccionar nuestro español. My advice now for the end of the course is to spend some time practicing, to get out and practice and expose yourself to Spanish as much as possible. And then maybe after a short while of practicing, you might want to repeat the course to refresh and touch up on anything that you might be unsure of, especially having practiced and being solid on so many things. It will really free up a lot of mental space to home in on the things that you are more uncertain with. And in this way, repeating the course might be a little bit like when you watch a good movie twice, and on the second time round, you have a different experience. The most important thing in this journey of exploring and improving your Spanish is to forget to enjoy it, to not obsess with the destination, but to enjoy the journey. You are already a Spanish speaker, you should enjoy it. There is a huge variety of literature, music and cinema coming from Spanish-speaking countries, so you can enjoy this and at the same time effectively be studying. But it won't feel like that. And we must bear in mind also that listening is a separate skill. You will hear many things that you could think your way through and say, and maybe not understand them. So when you first begin listening, don't be overwhelmed by the fact that you don't understand at the beginning as much as you can speak. All you have to do is insist on analyzing the language that you're exposed to, breaking it up and seeing what you can learn from that. And although at the beginning it will seem very fast, once you get in the habit of this analysis and this breaking up of the language in the same way that we were doing when we were building up to create our sentences, in reverse, deconstructing what you hear, the more you do this, the more Spanish will slow down. It will slow right down and you will hear a lot more. So, like I said, don't be overwhelmed by not understanding a lot at the beginning. Insist, enjoy music, watch movies with subtitles, try to match between the subtitles in English and what you are hearing in Spanish, and just try to match bits and pieces. If you insist with this very quickly, you will notice that you are understanding a lot more and that the language appears to slow right down. Thank you very much for participating in the language transfer project just by doing the course. please share it. Language Transfer is a completely independent and unfunded project. So we don't have any funds for the diffusion of this course. If this course got to you, it's because somebody shared it. So please do keep sharing and telling people about this way of learning so that they also might enjoy this experience for free. All of our courses are completely free to promote language learning and to allow anybody to have this experience anywhere in the world. But of course, the fact that the courses are free doesn't mean that we are immune to the world of monetary economics. We produce courses much slower than what we would like to due to a lack of funds. So when you donate, actually what you're donating is time that we are then able to spend on the construction, practice and recording of new courses. If you would like more information on the Language Transfer project, what we're doing and why, then check out our website www.languagetransfer.org. We really hope you enjoy using your new language and the new world that it opens up to you. Strangely, the same one that was there all along.
All right, done with language transfer. I'll just say a quick word what I think about language transfer. I think everyone should start with language transfer. It's fantastic in what it aims to do. And what it aims to do is give you a way to reason about Spanish. It gives you an overview of the entire language, all of the grammar, and a way to think through why things are happening how they are. The goal of language transfer isn't to give you a massive amount of vocabulary. It's not to have you speaking full paragraphs. In fact, you only speak tiny sentences throughout the course. It's more about giving you a way to reason about the language. And that is a great way to start, because everything else I've been doing up until now, whenever I've made 5-minute videos, I would look at what DeepL translations were telling me, and I would understand why things were the way they were without having to reference another source. And when I was trying to create my own sentences, maybe I knew a vocabulary word but not how to conjugate it. I was able to reason about how to conjugate it often. I've even read things online, like I'm subscribed to a Spanish subreddit, and when I read things, I am able to reason about the language, even though I don't know what it says yet. So language transfer isn't aiming to be something that drills you on vocabulary or even grammar or reading or writing or listening. It's really just purely to reason about the language, so you have this foundational skill that you can take to all the other things that you're going to do with Spanish: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So I highly recommend it. The downside is that after, I'd say, lesson 60, it just becomes a slog to get through, because you do feel like you have the skills to start doing other things. And you can do those things in parallel. Like, I was making my 5-minute videos in parallel, but you're listening to these 10-minute, 20-minute, 30 minutes a day in language transfer, where most of the language is English to explain the logic behind Spanish. So you're listening to these long lectures in English, and it's frustrating that you aren't just diving into the Spanish. At least that's my perspective as someone who wants to be tossed into the deep end of learning. But on the other hand, I do see why you do need to just power through and finish the course, because now I feel great that I have the skills to focus on other things. I can reason about Spanish. Tomorrow I'm gonna describe what I'm gonna be doing for phase two of my learning journey. So tune in. This was 42 days to finish language transfer and make 5-minute videos most of the weeks.